Welcome back to the Wealth Builder podcast. I'm your host, Nick Donato, financial advisor at Guidance Financial. I'm sure we've all had that moment where an idea pops into our head and we think that could be something, that could be a real business, that could be a product that people would pay for. But turning an idea into reality, actually taking that leap of faith, can be scary. Stepping into entrepreneurship, especially when you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from, can feel overwhelming. Today, I'm joined by Alex Kutry, entrepreneur and co founder of Auric. We're talking about what it's really like to take an idea from concept to reality, the risks along the way, and what it takes to build a profitable business from the ground up. So, Alex is, as I said, the co founder of Auric, the chief technological officer out there, engineer, and has had played a few parts in a few different startups. I've known Alex for too many years. So, thanks for finally jumping on the podcast.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks, Nick.
No worries. So, how did you get into being an entrepreneur, get into the space of making your ideas become real things?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think typically your stock standard entrepreneur is someone who exhibits this really high level of ambition. You know, you always hear stories of the tech genius that started his startup at 18. He was in university, dropped out because he thought he could do it better on his own and founded his company in his garage. I
Are you
never
talking Steve Jobs?
Well, yeah, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, there's the list goes on. Jeff Bezos,
Mm.
probably all the big tech companies have that sort of thing in common. But I kind of never really thought I had that sort of that level of ambition or that desire to take such a big risk in quitting uni and pursuing an idea. And I also don't think I really had that big idea that I thought was worth pursuing. So for me, I was always interested in the startup space more from the perspective of this grand, big innovation, this ability to disrupt industries, find inefficiencies and build businesses out of those opportunities. And I think one thing that I do have in common with these other entrepreneurs is this sort of sense of impatience. So out of uni, I went and worked for a startup for a number of years, where I kind of built, I guess, as an apprenticeship in understanding what it's like to build a startup. But what I really enjoyed there was just the ability for me to jump headfirst into problems. We were sort of given a leash to do what we wanted to do what we needed to do to solve the problem and build product, which is something very unique to startups. I think if you were to be in a corporate environment, you you would be answering to a project manager or to a lead supervisor. Your particular role is probably very narrowed into a specific little niche for a number of years before you're given the rein to kind of expand and do additional things. And when I say entrepreneurs are impatient, I think what I mean by that is I didn't really want to be doing that. I wanted to just jump headfirst into it, and whether that's for good or for bad, I love just the opportunity to just take on big challenges and do my best to try and solve it.
Yeah, big challenges definitely do pop up when you're starting from ground zero, so to speak. So you've got the freedom to do what you want, I guess, because it is your business. So in saying that, what does your day to day look like? What does an entrepreneur's day to day look like?
Yeah, I think definitely very much varies from day to day. So, today is Wednesday is all about meetings at the moment. So we've got marketing meetings. We're meeting with a marketing advisor today. to discuss strategy for the next few months as we get towards rolling out our first set of production units of the Auric Aromasphere. Other days I'm deep in code development, so writing firmware, writing software for our backend, for our app. And then other days there's customer relations. So we're talking to a lot of our customers. Some of our B2B clients at the moment are starting to roll out some of our units across their retail stores, and we're engaging those people in real life. So I'm going to the stores, meeting executives, that sort of thing. And then there's also the selling aspect of it. So when you do have your own business and your own startup, it's as much about selling the business as it is building product to sell. So selling yourself, selling what the business does today, what the vision of the business is for the future. So yeah, it's quite a diverse set of tasks and diverse set of hats that you're wearing, and kind of as I alluded to a bit earlier, I think that's what I really enjoy about the space is the ability to jump into different roles, different times of day, different days of the week, which really keeps the experience of working quite new and refreshing.
So you've got to play many different roles when it's your own business, when it's your own startup. And, I know that you came from an engineering background and did coding. So jumping from behind the computer coding and I guess not talking to too many people because you're just writing code, to then doing marketing and pitching and all of these types of things. Wearing, how did you develop yourself to be able to wear all the 17 different hats that you have to wear?
Yeah, it's definitely quite a challenge, and it requires a lot of self-reflection, I think, and a lot of willingness to try and fail. So I think in one of the earlier podcasts you did with Ethan Donati, he kind of alluded to it when he was talking about how he got over his fear of talking in person and pitching in front of large audiences. I think, as he said, you just have to do it and uh, put yourself in positions that force you to do it. So for me, we in the early days of Auric, before I joined Auric, I joined an accelerator program, an incubator, basically a whole bunch of people put together to brainstorm ideas with each other and develop ideas into hopefully profitable businesses. But part of joining that program was to actually force me to step out of my little engineering bubble. You very easily kind of gravitate towards what is comfortable, and for me that was product development and engineering. But and what didn't come naturally to me was the networking, was speaking to people, was getting in front of a stage and getting on a stage and in front of people and actually talking. So yeah, just learn by doing, and I think also reflecting on those experiences. So record yourself talking, play it back, listen to yourself, watch your kind of hand gestures and your facial expressions and things like that. And it's very, very awkward and really painful the first time you do it, but after 3 or 4 or 5 times, you will see this tangible improvement in how you're speaking. And it's something that I apply to a lot of the different roles that I do. So marketing, for example, we made a concerted effort to start to make more content, so YouTube videos, Instagram videos, and it was a horrible experience at the start. You record yourself. I'm sure you find something similar with this podcast. The early days of it, you really it's quite cringy. But the more you do it, the more you kind of understand what you need to do to make it a bit better, a bit more engaging. And as long as you're willing to kind of get into these feedback loops and be willing to engage in, as long as you're willing to kind of watch those videos and improve upon what you did previously, you'll definitely see that improvement.
Yep. The title of this podcast is Life of an Entrepreneur, and I definitely did see your Instagram reels of your move to Brisbane and unpacking and whatnot. So just putting yourself out there is, I guess, a step to
Exactly.
to getting your product, your brand out there. Um, so yeah, so would the biggest tip be to get out there and, in terms of pitching, because obviously you need to have an idea to be able to start this process. But if you did have an idea, your biggest tip would be to get out there and put yourself out there, record yourself, as you said, and do
Yeah.
those types of things.
Yeah, I think the grand misconception about startups and these sort of billion-dollar ideas that everybody seems to have is everyone's so secretive and protective of an idea that they've got, and so often I meet people who are like who are hesitant to share what they're doing because they're fearful of someone stealing that idea and turning it into a billion-dollar business. But ultimately, the startup space is as much about execution on a brilliant idea as it is about the idea itself. And you very quickly find that the more people you talk to about an idea or about something that you're doing, the more opportunities for feedback you have and insight that you might not have thought about. So definitely would advise, get out there, network with different people, go to startup events, because you don't know who you're going to run into. This industry of startups is as much about these sliding doors moments of meeting just the right individual at the right time who might be interested in what you're doing enough to invest in you or enough to become a co-founder in what you're doing or enough to even use your product in their business. So it's definitely built on networks and relationships for sure.
Yeah, and on that networking and getting out there, you had your biggest breakthrough as a startup or as an entrepreneur with Auric, as you've mentioned a few times already. You obviously worked on a few other startups that may not have come to full fruition, as I'm sure that, heaps of lots of startups probably fail at some point. So I guess initially, do you want to tell us what Auric is?
Yeah. So Oric is an intelligent scent and well-being platform where we leverage your sense of smell to support different mood states and the shifting between different mood states of calm, energy, focus, and sleep. So our core technology is a little diffuser unit. It contains oil cartridges. These cartridges you can dispense in different combinations to create different scent profiles. And the whole thesis is that we can leverage your sense of smell or a specific aroma blend to help support that different mood states, as I said. So in a similar way that I'm sure a lot of us use, sound or music to hype ourselves up for a gym session or for a run or to help calm ourselves down. Research and studies in behavioral science and the olfactory system suggest that your sense of smell can do a very, very similar thing. It is a highly visceral sense, one that is very closely tied to emotion and memory. And I'm sure you, Nick, have got a very visceral reaction to certain scents. For me, the smell of eucalyptus reminds me of when I was a kid and I was sick, and Mum would put eucalyptus Vicks Vapor Rub on my chest, and that kind of experience is quite calming for me. And so whenever I smell eucalyptus, I get that sort of sense of calm. Um, so that's the general gist of Auric, and yeah, it's been an exciting journey so far, and one that we've barely cracked the beginning of it, but we're excited for where we're heading.
Sounds like, yeah, a good product to have. And with, again, as I said, there may have been some other startups in the past. So how did you get this breakthrough with Auric that it's now an idea that's become a reality or becoming a reality?
Yeah, so it goes back to 2024. So I was working for a startup. I'd been at this startup for about 6 years. It was an underwater robotics startup based down in Melbourne. Um, and I was for quite a long time was thinking about starting my own business, my own startup. And as you said, I did try a number of things, but nothing really stuck for a number of years. But what I found, or what I eventually realized, is that I needed to outsource accountability for getting something moving. So what I meant by that was I realized I wasn't really a self-starter. So while I was comfortable working, taking a decent salary, I really had no driving motivation to get something off the ground. So I'm in August 2024, I made a conscious decision to quit my job. I signed up for an accelerator program, and that was with Antler VC in August 2024. And what that meant was, so Antler required me to actually work full time in this accelerator program. And what that meant was it was the push and the nudge that I needed to actually get something moving, because I basically took the guardrails away of that full time job. And I put myself in a position and in an environment that encouraged the pursuit of this startup, or the pursuit of an idea. And in this accelerator program is where I met Adam, my co-founder. So Adam came in with the idea of Auric. He'd been working on it for a couple of years himself. And when I came into that program, I really had no intention of jumping on board to another hardware startup. So I'd been working at a hardware startup for 6 years. I knew how hard it was to get it off the ground, and the kind of laborious long nights required to take a product from prototype through to commercial. And so often the night before a presentation to a client, of course, the hardware stops working and you're stuck late at night trying to fix it. So I had no intention to jump on a hardware startup, but after a couple of weeks, I met Adam, and Adam's a very impressive fellow, really passionate about what he was doing at Auric. And I warmed up to the idea and decided to join him with that as the technical co-founder. So came on board as the chief technology officer, and yeah, the rest is kind of history. We've been the last couple of years building out the prototype, taking that prototype to commercial, and now in production and shipping units worldwide actually now.
Where's worldwide? How many countries have we
Yeah,
put our
so
product in?
we've got orders from the island. We've got orders in the US, UK, New Zealand more recently as well. Um, so really excited. We had our global launch of Auric in August last year on the TV show The Block. So that was a fantastic little bump for us. Exciting opportunity to get on TV and showcase what we could do. And since then, the show has started to be aired across the world as well. So we can kind of tell when the show has been aired because you start seeing little orders come through from different parts of the world. But yeah, we're very excited. 2026 is going to be the year we really start to pursue and push into those global markets.
So the thing you did differently from past startups, past experiences to this one would be you invested all of your time and effort into the one startup, the one product, rather than keeping your old salaried job as a
Yeah.
safety net and just dived straight into this to see if it would work out. Did you have this is going to be an interesting question. Did you have a point where you're like, if this doesn't work in 2 years, I'm just going to blow it up and go back and sit behind the desk and code forever again?
Yeah, I think it's wise to have that thought. A business mentor of mine said to me once, you need to set a set of milestones for yourself so you're not banging your head against the wall on the wrong idea for too long, because time is probably our most precious commodity, and if you spend too much time on something that's not going anywhere, you can't really get that back. But yeah, I should preface by saying that I've put myself in a position to be able to take the risk of jumping into my own business. I think I didn't at the time, I didn't see it as a particularly risky move. I worked full time for a number of years, built up a savings so that I still did have a safety net in case everything went wrong. I could still live, afford to pay my rent and buy food. So it wasn't a huge risk. Didn't feel like a huge risk jumping on board back then. But yeah, you definitely need to set some milestones of, if I don't hit this certain milestone by this date, I should start thinking about winding down and stepping away, because it's that age old question of when is the right time to call it quits. And for some startups they called it too early and the potential was there, but they just needed to push a little bit longer. And for other startups they pushed too long and spent way too much money and lost way too much time. So it's a challenging one to kind of know, and it's not one that I think anyone can really provide advice on, other than just make sure you set yourself certain deadlines and understanding your own situation. For me, I don't have a kid, I don't have a family, I don't have dependents, so my risk profile is probably a little bit higher, which means I can probably pursue this a little bit longer. But if you have a family or certain people that rely on you, you need to be mindful of when is the right time to call it.
Hmm. And so you said your product got on the block, I'm guessing, through some networking and events to meet different types of people.
Mhm.
So how did you or how are you growing the exposure of your business, your startup? Because obviously the Disneys of the world or the large companies have unlimited marketing spend and heaps of exposure when they sponsor sporting teams or events or things like that. But as a small startup, how did you or how do you grow your exposure of your product?
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that I only learned quite recently over the last 6 months, really, is when you're looking for, the term is growth channels. So channels where you can gain large amounts of traction for relatively low cost. So, your traditional marketing scenarios is, put a lot of money into Facebook ads, into Meta ads, Google ads, and your sales will go up. But you want to find channels where for every dollar you spend, you get a much larger return on that, and that relies on sort of non-traditional strategies. So it's the likes of creating content, things like podcasting, things like YouTube videos. I think these days, especially now with AI content being so prolific, people like seeing that sort of human side to a startup. So understanding who is the founder, what is the founder up to, what is happening behind the scenes of a startup. So we've made a conscious effort to start to put more of that type of content out, and it's hard. It takes time, and it takes a bit to kind of get comfortable with it, as we sort of talked about a bit earlier. But those are the sorts of things where we think we'll be able to get much greater traction, and for every dollar that we put in for that, hopefully we get a much better return on that marketing investment. Yeah, I think that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And for anyone out there that does have an idea or does want to get into the space, do you have any tips that you would share with them?
Um,
Other than obviously, as we've already spoken, of networking,
yeah,
taking a bit of a leap, have a safety net. It would be nice. But yeah, any other tips that, you'd provide as a seasoned startup entrepreneur?
what would I suggest? I think just outsourcing that accountability. I can't really stress that enough. I think putting yourself in a position where you're relying on someone else to hold you accountable in many ways. So for me, that was Adam with Auric. Is I turn up to work every morning because I don't want to let him down, and that's worked out very very well for me. And I think that first step, before it was Adam, it was the Antler Accelerator program that allowed me to take that first step. Sorry, um, and then I guess you know, with the proliferation of AI tools these days, I think it's become easier than ever to validate an idea. So, I would highly recommend, before taking that big leap into quitting your job and pursuing something without any idea of whether it's going to be successful or not, is try and get some kind of validation. So you do that by talking to people. You do that by putting some kind of minimum viable product out there. So you can use AI tools to build a website, to build a basic app. It doesn't have to be flash, doesn't have to be glamorous, but it does need to solve a problem. So really focus on the problem space that you're pursuing, and always be problem focused rather than solution focused. And I think for me as an engineer, that was something that took a long time to get comfortable and used to. Is, you don't want to come up with a solution before you have a problem. And often the solution that you do come up with isn't actually addressing the problem at hand. And you can get stuck in these loops of trying to trying to push the development of a solution that no one actually wants, because it doesn't actually solve a real problem. So definitely focus on the problem space. It helps if you've got some kind of subject domain expertise in that problem space, or if you have some critical insight into that space that no one else has. Those are often great signs that you might be onto something. Um, and yeah, definitely use the tools at hand to kind of validate that as quickly as possible. And if it's not going to go anywhere, kill the idea as quickly as possible and move on.
Hmm. And then the next step would be, outside of your startup and your engineering side of things, would be to structure your business in an appropriate manner, chat to, all the appropriate professionals, getting an accountant to set up the right structures if that's the path you go down, making sure that if this does become a viable startup, if this does become a 1 billion-dollar company, that it's set up in the right manner to begin with, because it might save you a couple of headaches down the track.
Yes, definitely.
Do you have any? So that's the tips, and I'm guessing you've probably learnt some of those from your own mistakes, not too many, of course. But is there any, traps or things that you wished you knew earlier that would, help
Mm.
you out in the space?
Yes, I think the old saying of the 10-year overnight success is the classic misnomer in startups. No startup, I think, can be launched and ultra successful within a year. Look, granted, you've got the likes of Clawbot, this new tool that has probably done that, but very few startups are successful overnight. It is actually quite a grind, and the whole life of an entrepreneur and a startupper is not glamorous 100% of the time. It's a highly stressful job, and there's much easier ways to get rich if that's what you're after. So don't expect that you're going to be successful in overnight, or in a year, or in 2 years. It often takes 5 or 10 years to really build something that's scalable and going to be successful. This idea of product market fit is finding a product and then finding a customer base that really, really loves it. That takes a long time and takes a lot of iteration. And even the first set of customers that you have as a startup, as an early stage startup, quite often won't be the long-term customer base either. Um, it takes that iteration and that life cycle progression to understand truly what that customer looks like to you, and then obviously finding where that customer exists. So yeah, the trap is getting into startups thinking that it's a couple of years. It ends up being 5 to 10 years for the most part. There are obviously outliers here and there, but for the most part, um, it's a long haul endeavor, and needs to be treated as such. And it's something that will definitely challenge you mentally and physically. And there's a lot of stressful times associated with it. But on the occasion where you do have a massive breakthrough, and it's as simple as things like, a positive review on Facebook just kind of pumping your tires a little bit, that's what really makes it worth it. The addiction to those kind of small wins of success, signing a big contract, getting some customers that say some positive things about you or about the business is really awesome, and that's why we do it.
Love it. No worries. And we'll give Auric one last plug. Where can we find it? Where can we find you? Give
Yeah,
yourself one last go.
yeah. So you can find us on our website auric.au, auric.au. We are still on pre-order for our latest production batch delivering in May, June. So you can jump on board if you're interested in the product there. Otherwise, yeah, find us on socials, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You'll see my ugly mug on YouTube, hopefully making a lot more content. Hopefully it's a bit more interesting and engaging as we go along, but no promises there.
No, no worries. Thanks for coming along. And I guess to summarize or to give a bit of an overview, you know, startups can be rewarding, entrepreneurship can be rewarding, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into it in the background. Networking can help, sharing your ideas, with the fear that someone might steal it, but sharing yourself and putting yourself out there might help you out. But that's a wrap for today's episode of the Wealth Builder podcast. Thanks, Alex, for joining me today, to chat entrepreneurship, to chat Auric, to chat about what's going on in your world. Thanks to everyone for listening along as well. If you liked today's episode, feel free to drop us a message or share it with someone you know who might find our conversation valuable. But I look forward to bringing you the next episode in a fortnight's time. Until then, have a great day.